Today, I really want to dive into why sacrifice is not your superpower. I mean, what if leadership as a whole wasn't about suffering, but it was about sustainability instead? I mean, what if sacrifice is not your superpower and audacity actually is? Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Living Room Wisdom, where your story is your glory. Many of us were taught that love means giving until it hurts, right? That leadership means being last in line, and that being a good woman means saying yes to everything, right? Even when your soul is screaming, no. But chronic sacrifice is not love, it's self abandonment. And I have to say, I've been there many times. And I think probably the most profound example of self abandonment, and I didn't know it at the time, but in retrospect, would be my marriage, my 20 plus years marriage. I met my husband when I was 15 years old. I was a woman who never really wanted to get married or have children, but I fell in love and kind of fell into this mold or this model of what marriage should be. And I already was someone who was raised to kind of be the good girl, be seen, not heard. I was stifled in my voice at the time, and just not very confident in how I should show up in relationship. So I was young, I was naive, I had no real model of marriage. And so looking at the examples that I had, most of the women in my family were not married, didn't have successful marriages. So I wasn't really sure what it took to make a great marriage thrive. And so I just took on this very submissive role, overgiving, right? But that overgiving, trying to take care of house, home, children, kind of denying myself in a lot of ways. At certain point, probably about 12 years into our relationship, that overgiving started to turn into resentment. That overgiving started to feel like not reciprocal, right? Where I was feeling neglected, even though we spent time together, we loved spending time together. I didn't really receive like gifts or feel as if my needs were really being taken care of in a lot of ways in the first 12 years of our marriage. And in retrospect, I realized the reason for that is because I didn't go into the relationship with any kind of expectations, right? I just followed the mold of what society told me that marriage is supposed to be and what the role of a wife and a role of a mother is supposed to look like. And for me, the message, the belief, the story that I had was that the woman is the one who handles it all. Right? If it is to be, it's up to me. I set the tone of the household. I'm the one who's responsible for making it all work. And so I completely abandoned myself for fear of being abandoned, if that makes sense, right? That deep abandonment wound, not really having a relationship with my father, at least not the relationship that I wanted to have, that closeness, that feeling that I was supported and that he was there for me, then trickled into my relationship with my husband. And I do truly believe that this happens with a lot of women. We end up marrying our dads in a lot of ways. But if you fast forward in that relationship, right around the 12-year point where I started to feel a little bit, um, you know, like my needs weren't being taken care of, and basically like the resentment feelings that I was starting to feel, rather than trying to solve the problem, my coping mechanism, my what do they call it? Your attachment styles. My attachment style would be just to bail at that time, right? And so I deeply considered leaving my relationship, even though at that point we had two houses, two cars, two children, and essentially overall we had a happy marriage. But at that point it was because of myself, it was because of the overgiving, it was because of me creating the date nights and creating the romance and creating everything, right? But before I actually took that step to step away from the marriage, I decided to take a deeper dive, lean in, find my voice, articulate my needs, and really see if we could find a path forward. So, again, sacrifice is not your superpower. And in this moment, I started to take my power back. I started to develop this, I guess, idea and this alignment within myself of what I wanted in a marriage. And what I wanted was communication, quality time, to feel like a queen, right? In some senses, chairs pulled out, jackets being put on for me, doors opened, that chivalry, which I wasn't getting previously. And there was a time where I felt like where I shouldn't have to ask for this. And I think a lot of women have that belief where I shouldn't have to tell you what I need. But I'll never forget the time where my husband looked at me and said, I'm not a mind reader, right? I'm not a mind reader. You have to communicate what it is that you want from me. And then it gives him the opportunity to say yes or to say no, to respond and shift his way of interacting with me or not. And I'm so glad that I did that because I realized that I was responsible for what I did and didn't get in relationship. And I was able to also have empower myself to make those shifts and changes. So I decided to start using my voice. I chose to really not only set boundaries, but to uphold those boundaries in the relationship. I began to express my needs, my likes and my dislikes, not just in our regular conversations, friendship, things of that nature, but also in the bedroom and in other areas. Like, what did I really desire? What did I really want? What did I like? What did I dislike? And I think a lot of times women, we discount what our true needs and desires are, maybe because of shame, maybe because we feel like that shouldn't be our place as a woman, or like I said previously, that they should just know. And that's not reality. So let's talk about how I started to shift this because I think it's really important. The way that I found my voice was through my own personal development. I mean, not focusing so much on what my partner is or isn't doing or who they are or are not being to me, but really going deep into who I want to be or who I am as a woman, what I do and don't like, how I want to feel. And I did that through personal development, through reading, through doing workshops, through some spiritual work. And so I then brought that into my relationship. We started reading books together, right? We started, and which was really sexy, by the way, believe it or not. So reading some relationship books together started to help us open up conversations and bring the awareness of what each of us really needed and what we weren't getting in the relationship. And then again, we were together for 12 years. I was 15 when I met this man. So I didn't know anything from anything. From that point, with us starting to read together, starting to make new decisions, committing to our date nights, it really developed into a whole new relationship. And so for the next 12 plus years, well, 12, maybe 10 plus years after that, we were able to enjoy a whole new version of what this relationship was and how I showed up for myself, how I showed up for relationship, and how I showed up for others completely shifted in a positive way, where sacrifice was no longer my superpower. Audacity and showing up and taking up space was. So this was what really changed my life. And I wanted to just share that today because the person I became as a result of that conflict, as a result of not feeling seen, not feeling heard, feeling undervalued or underappreciated, actually became an opportunity to become the woman that I am today and do the things that I'm doing today. And so, unfortunately, when you fast forward to January of 2009, that was after the fall of the market. And as you may or may not know, my husband was in the financial industry. So his identity, his confidence, and our finances took a hit. And so in January of 2009, my husband unfortunately fell into a depression And I don't know how long it lasted because it wasn't something that I recognized or was familiar with at the time. But in January 9th of 2009, my husband went missing for 24 hours. And the next morning, I found out he had taken his life. And at the time, we had three children. I was in that superwoman, super mom role already. But with him now out of the picture and finding out I was pregnant with my fourth child on the same day, you can imagine that that sacrifices superpower, super mom narrative started to really sink back in. And I had to make a choice that, I'm not going to go back into that old pattern that I had released and broken through, that I was going to choose to become a victor over my situation currently and redefine life and motherhood and handling all of these countless things that I needed to handle on my terms so that I can still live as an embodied, abundant, joyful, fulfilled woman. And so I actually wrote my first book in 2015. My first book was Motherhood's Not for Punks, a badass mom's guide to self mastery, mindful mothering, and having it all when you do it all. And that was rooted in my experience of losing my husband as a full time entrepreneur and raising four children as a single mom. Some of the things that I did to maintain my lifestyle, my sense of freedom, and to feel fulfilled is that I homeschooled my children. Because while that might seem really challenging or sound really challenging to some people, it enabled me to maintain control of my time. And time is very important, especially as an entrepreneur. Some of the other things that I did was I started implementing yoga into our daily practices and meditation. So when my children would get frustrated or when I would get frustrated, I had a bell and we would ring the bell, and that means let's come together and do like 10 minutes of meditation or some movement or go take a walk outside. So there are so many practices that we can put in place in our lives to maintain our sovereignty over our lives, right? Our I don't like the word control per se because control is very closed. I feel like sovereignty is a very open, receptive word that brings forth that energy, that grounding, right? That ability to be in the midst of chaos and still have life be on your terms. And so this is where the anatomy of abundance framework was birthed from this place of wanting to maintain the truth of who I am, live as the truth of who I am, while also caring for and guiding the lives of my four children. So the core, I would say, pillar of the anatomy of abundance is sacred self-care. And once I decided that I am the divine in my life, mind, body, spirit, finance, and that I get to change my relationship with all of those things, that was when everything changed. So if you haven't already really taken responsibility for your own capacity, for your time, for your desires, and acknowledge the fact and own the fact that you don't have to carry it all alone, that is just the beginning, right? Practicing audacious boundaries, modeling unapologetic rest without shame, without apology, right? Because every time that you say yes when you mean no, you teach others and yourself, your body, that your needs don't really matter. And you're also teaching others how to treat you, right? You're allowing certain things, even if you're not articulating it, is sending the message that it's okay to do X, Y, and Z. So when you model boundaries, when you say no unapologetically, when you rest unapologetically, you're choosing to live in your joy. And that also gives other people permission to do the same. So I believe that the way that we live inspires others or repels others, and that it's our responsibility to create this new way of being a feminine leader. So, with that said, if you haven't already gotten your copy of the Anatomy of Abundance book, if you've not yet downloaded your 6 ways to win back your time without losing your mind, free PDF that we offer here with our podcast, I would encourage you to go ahead and take that step today. Make a decision now that sacrifice is not your superpower, that audaciousness, that taking up space and owning all of who you are is. And with that, I thank you for joining us on this episode of Living Room Wisdom. And make sure you subscribe and follow so that you're alerted of our new episodes each week with incredible leaders, interviews, solo episodes. And we'll see you back here in our living room. Have a wonderful week. See you soon.